Hi guys, and welcome to today's tutorial. In today's tutorial we're going to look at the accounting process, and we're going to look at the ledger accounts. Okay, there's a few different ledger accounts, and you need to understand each of these ledger accounts and what you have to do and how you have to audit the books. Okay, so the first thing you need to know is that there's different types of ledger accounts, and there are three different types of ledger accounts. The first one is called the general ledger. The second one is the debtors ledger, and the third one is the creditors ledger. So I've wrote down the three different types of ledger accounts. One is the general ledger, two is the debtors ledger, and three is the creditors ledger. So in the general ledger, we put in our assets, the liabilities, and we put in expenses and gains. Okay, so they're the different things that go into the general ledger: assets, liabilities, expenses, and any gains. The next one is a debtors ledger, and in the debtors ledger we put in all the people who owe the business money. So if somebody owes the business money, well then they will go into the debtors ledger. Okay, and finally the last one is the creditors ledger. And in the creditors ledger is the people that the business owes money to. So we put all the people that we as a business owe money to and the amount into the creditors ledger. So with all ledger accounts, they all have two sides, okay? They've got a debit side and they've got a credit side. And the debit side is the receiving side and the credit side is the giving side. Okay, so I need you to remember that. The debit side, it's when you're receiving, so it's the receiving side. The credit side is when you're giving. Okay, so just highlight that again. So the debit side is the receiving side, when you're receiving something. And the credit side is the giving side. Credit side is the giving side. So, I hope you've learned that little rule, okay? So the debit side is the receiving side, credit side is the giving side. I'm going to go back and do the question that we looked at in the first video of this accounting process. We looked at the purchases and the purchases returns, the day books. I'm going to continue on this question. So as you can see, these are all the purchases that our business has made in the month of May, okay? So we need to fill out the ledger accounts. So we're going to fill them out now. So the very first one was on the 2nd of May, we purchased goods on credit from Maloney and Sons. Okay, so what you got to think is who is receiving the goods and who is the giver of the goods. Okay, so if it's the receiver is on the debit side and the giver, the giving is on the giving side, which is the credit side. So we would say we would debit the purchases account because the purchases is the one that's receiving. Our purchases account is receiving the goods. We are receiving the goods, so we would debit our purchases because we're the receiver. Okay, so we purchased the goods on credit from Maloney and Sons, so we're going to debit our purchase account because we are the ones that are receiving the goods. Our business bought from Maloney and Sons, so we are the receiver of the goods, therefore we debit our purchase account. Who's the giver? Well, Maloney and Sons are the giver because they're the ones that are giving the goods to us. So Maloney and Sons, we're going to credit the Maloney and Sons account because they are the givers of the goods. Okay, so I'll put it in here. So credit the Maloney and Sons account because Maloney and Sons were the giver of the goods to us. So I want you to try to work out the next one. So purchase goods on credit from Cummins Limited. So what we do here is we would debit our purchase account because we are the one that are receiving the goods, and we would credit Cummins. For purchase goods and credit from Maloney and Sons, we are going to debit the purchases account and we're going to credit Maloney and Sons. And the last one, received an invoice from Cummins. Don't get confused. Remember, this is just another way of saying purchase goods from Cummins Limited. So we would debit our purchases account and credit Cummins Limited. Right, the next one we're going to look at is the purchases returns account, okay? So what do we do this when we go in the ledger accounts? What have we got to do? Well, it's the same thing. It's very simple. You debit the receiving side and you credit the giving side, the giver. Okay, so we have on the 12th of May, we returned faulty goods to Maloney and Sons. Okay, who is now receiving the goods? you got to think in your head, who is receiving the goods? Okay, so if we're the business and we were given the business, we are giving them to Maloney and Sons, well then Maloney and Sons are receiving the goods. So we're going to debit Maloney and Sons account because they are receiving the goods. Okay, so I'll put this in now. So debit the Maloney and Sons account because they are receiving the goods. Okay, what happens? Who's going to be the giving side? Who's given the goods now? Well, what's happening is we're going to say we credit our purchases returns account because we are giving the goods back. Okay, we are the giver. Okay, so I just wrote that in. So we're going to credit our purchases returns account because we are giving the goods back. And the very last thing you need to know for your ledger accounts is the the VAT. What to do with VAT? So VAT is value added tax. And what you do with that is VAT is included in the figures in the creditors account, but it's not included in the figures of the purchases and the purchases returns account. So instead we enter VAT into a separate VAT account, okay, as the following. So like I said, VAT is included in the creditors account, but it's not included in the purchases or purchase returns. So instead for the purchases and purchase returns, we're going to have to do a separate VAT account. Okay, and it's going to go like this. So for the purchases, we're going to debit the VAT account. So on the purchases book, we're going to debit the VAT account. And for the purchases returns, we're going to credit the VAT account. Okay, so for purchases, we're going to debit account. And for purchase returns, we're going to credit the account. Okay, so that's it for today's tutorial on the accounting process. And we looked at ledger accounts. And we looked at what we had to do with our purchases and our purchases returns and our VAT in our ledger accounts. Hope you found this video useful. If you'd like some more videos, please check out our website. You can also find more videos on YouTube. If you do look on the YouTube, can you leave me some feedback? Let me know what you thought of the videos, and maybe could you subscribe to the YouTube channel? This also makes it easier for you guys to find more videos in the future. And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram for all our latest news and updates. Thanks guys.